Her dog kept blocking the door on Christmas morning, and when the family discovered the truth, their hearts broke. It was supposed to be the happiest day of the year, but Max, the Johnson family's beloved golden retriever, was acting strangely, something no one could ignore. The snow blanketed the quiet suburban neighborhood, and the Johnsons' home was alive with Christmas cheer. The tree glowed softly in the corner, surrounded by neatly wrapped presents. Emma Johnson hummed along to a holiday tune as she finished preparing breakfast, while her daughter, Lily, excitedly poked at her stocking. But amidst the warmth and joy, Max had planted himself firmly in front of the front door, growling softly every time someone tried to approach. At first, the family laughed it off, assuming he was just being protective. "Silly dog. Maybe he thinks Santa is still out there," Lily joked, giggling. Emma bent down to ruffle Max's fur, but his reaction startled her. His ears were pinned back, his eyes darting nervously, and he let out a low, warning bark, a sound they rarely heard from their gentle companion. "What's gotten into him?" Emma wondered aloud, glancing at her husband, Mark, who had just stepped into the room holding a tray of coffee mugs. Max's behavior became more unsettling by the minute. He wouldn't budge, his body rigid and blocking the door like a steadfast guardian. Every time the family tried to coax him away with treats or toys, he refused, his attention locked on the door as if he could sense something beyond it. Mark chuckled nervously, trying to lighten the mood. "Maybe he's just excited for his Christmas gift," he said, holding up a new chew toy. But even that didn't work. Instead of wagging his tail or jumping up eagerly, Max whined softly, a sound laced with urgency and sadness. "Should we check outside?" Emma suggested, her voice tinged with concern. The laughter and excitement of the morning faded as a heavy tension filled the room. The family exchanged uneasy glances. Finally, Mark moved toward the door, but as his hand reached for the knob, Max barked loudly, almost lunging to stop him. It was clear. Max wasn't just being stubborn. He was trying to tell them something. What they discovered next would change their Christmas morning forever. The Johnson family froze at Max's sudden outburst. He barked again, loud and insistent, his paws scratching against the wooden floor as if trying to push Mark back from the door. The sound startled Lily, who clutched her favorite stuffed bear tightly. "Why is Max so upset?" she whispered, her young voice trembling. Emma knelt beside Max, trying to calm him. She placed a hand gently on his back, feeling the tension in his muscles. "It's okay, boy," she said soothingly. But Max wouldn't be consoled. His gaze remained locked on the door, his bark replaced by a low, guttural growl that sent chills down Emma's spine. Mark, though hesitant, decided to take charge. "It's probably nothing," he said, more to reassure himself than anyone else. Maybe a squirrel or a delivery truck spooked him. He motioned for Emma and Lily to step back as he moved toward the door, Max's growls intensifying with every step. Taking a deep breath, Mark slowly turned the knob and cracked the door open. Max lunged forward, barking furiously, but Mark managed to hold him back with one hand. Outside, the snow-covered porch appeared empty, the cold morning air biting against his face. The neighborhood seemed serene. Christmas decorations adorned the houses, and smoke curled lazily from chimneys. But then, Mark noticed something out of place. At the edge of the porch, half buried in snow, lay a crumpled envelope. The handwriting on it was messy, almost hurried, and his name, Mark Johnson, was scrawled across the front. Frowning, Mark picked it up, ignoring Max's frantic barks behind him. "There's nothing here but this," he called back to Emma, holding up the envelope. As soon as Mark shut the door, Max quieted, his barking replaced by a soft whine. The dog's sudden calmness unsettled Emma even more. "What does it say?" she asked, her eyes flicking between Mark and the envelope. Mark carefully opened it, pulling out a single sheet of paper. His face paled as he read the message, the words shaking him to his core. "You don't know me, but I need your help. Please check the woods behind your house. There's no time to explain." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "What on earth?" she whispered, her voice trailing off. Lily clung to her mother, sensing the rising tension. "Is this some kind of prank?" Mark asked, though his tone betrayed his doubt. He glanced at Max, who was now sitting by the door, his ears perked up and his eyes watching Mark intently, almost as if he understood the significance of the note. "I don't think Max would react like this to a prank," Emma said. "Maybe we should check." "What if someone's hurt?" Mark hesitated, looking out the window at the dense forest behind their property. The idea of venturing out into the cold, snowy woods on Christmas morning felt absurd, but then he looked at Max. The dog was rarely wrong. His instincts had saved them before. "All right," Mark said finally, grabbing his coat. "I'll go take a look." "I'm coming too," Emma said firmly, pulling on her boots. "Lily, stay inside with Max." "No," Lily cried. "I want to come." But Emma knelt down and placed her hands gently on her daughter's shoulders. "Sweetheart, we need you to keep Max company, okay? He'll feel better if you're here with him." Reluctantly, Lily nodded, watching as her parents bundled up and stepped out into the cold. Max whined again, scratching at the door as if protesting their decision to leave without him. The woods behind their house were eerily silent, the snow crunching underfoot as Mark and Emma made their way through the trees. The branches above them swayed gently in the wind, casting long shadows over the pristine snow. "What are we even looking for?" Emma asked, her breath visible in the icy air. "I'm not sure," Mark admitted, holding the note tightly in his gloved hand. "But if someone went to the trouble of leaving this, we can't just ignore it." They walked deeper into the forest, scanning the ground for any signs of disturbance. Then, Emma stopped abruptly, pointing ahead. "What's that?" Mark followed her gaze and saw it, a small bundle of blankets nestled at the base of a tree. His heart raced as he approached, each step feeling heavier than the last. When he reached the bundle, he carefully pulled back the top layer of fabric. Inside was a baby. The infant's cheeks were red from the cold, but it was alive, its tiny chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. "Oh my God," Emma whispered, tears welling up in her eyes. "Mark, it's a baby. Someone left a baby out here." Mark's hands trembled as he picked up the infant, wrapping it tightly in the blankets to shield it from the cold. "Who would do this?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. But there was no time to dwell on the question. "We need to get back to the house," Emma said urgently. "This baby needs warmth and care now." They turned and hurried back toward their home, their minds racing with questions. Who had left the note? Why had they abandoned the baby? And most importantly, how had Max known something was wrong? As they reached their back porch, Max greeted them with frantic barks, his tail wagging furiously. When he saw the bundle in Mark's arms, he stopped barking and sniffed at it gently, his soft whines filled with concern. Inside the house, Emma quickly prepared a warm space for the baby, while Mark called 911. As they waited for help to arrive, the family couldn't shake the feeling that their Christmas morning had just become part of a much larger mystery. As they waited for emergency responders, Emma rocked the baby gently in her arms, her heart aching for the tiny, fragile life she held. The infant stirred slightly, its soft cries muffled by the warm blanket. "She's so small," Emma whispered. "Mark, who could have done this?" Mark paced the room, his phone still in his hand after speaking with the dispatcher. "I don't know, Emma," he replied, his voice heavy with worry. "But whoever it was, they trusted us to find her. And Max, he knew something was wrong before we even did." Max sat beside Emma, his eyes fixed on the baby. His protective stance hadn't wavered, and his ears twitched at every sound. It was as if he was standing guard over the newest member of their family. "You're a good boy, Max," Emma said softly, stroking his head. "You saved her." The sound of sirens approaching broke the tension in the room. Mark rushed to the door and opened it just as two paramedics stepped onto the porch. Their faces shifted from professional calm to visible surprise when they saw the baby in Emma's arms. "This is the baby we called about," Mark said, gesturing for them to come inside. "We found her in the woods behind our house." The paramedics quickly assessed the baby's condition, their expressions softening as they confirmed she was stable. "She's a fighter," one of them said with a small smile. "It's amazing she's doing this well after being out in the cold." As the paramedics prepared to transport the baby to the hospital for further evaluation, one of them turned to Mark and Emma. "Do you have any idea who might have left her there?" he asked. Mark shook his head. "No, Sue, but we found this note on our porch," he said, handing it over. The paramedic read it carefully, his brow furrowing. "This is odd," he muttered. "We'll make sure this gets to the authorities. Hopefully, it'll help them figure out what's going on." As the ambulance pulled away, Emma stood on the porch, clutching Mark's arm. "I hope she'll be okay," she murmured, tears glistening in her eyes. "She will be," Mark said, his voice firm. "She's strong. And whoever left that note, they knew we'd find her in time." But the mystery didn't end there. The next morning, Mark was sipping his coffee when he heard Max growl softly. The dog was standing by the living room window, his nose pressed against the glass. Mark joined him, peering outside. At first he saw nothing unusual, just the fresh blanket of snow that had fallen overnight, but then movement caught his eye. A figure was standing at the edge of the woods, partially obscured by the trees. The person was bundled in a heavy coat and hat, their features hidden. They seemed to be watching the house. Mark's pulse quickened. "Emma!" he called, keeping his voice low. "Come here." Emma hurried to his side, her eyes widening when she saw the figure. "Do you think it's—" "I don't know," Mark replied, "but I'm going to find out." "Mark, wait," Emma said, grabbing his arm. "What if it's not safe?" Mark hesitated, looking back at her. "Max will come with me. He'll warn me if anything's wrong." Emma nodded reluctantly, her worry evident. "Be careful." Mark slipped on his coat and boots, Max following close behind. As they stepped outside, the cold air stung his face. He approached the figure slowly, his heart pounding with every step. When he was about 20 feet away, the figure turned and began to walk into the woods. "Wait," Mark called out. "I just want to talk." The person paused for a moment, but didn't turn back. Instead, they raised a hand as if gesturing for him to stay where he was, and then disappeared into the trees. Max barked once, but Mark held him back. "Let them go, boy," he said softly. "They're not ready to talk yet." Back inside, Mark recounted what had happened to Emma. "Whoever they are, they're watching," he said. "But I don't think they mean any harm. If they did, they wouldn't have left the baby on our porch." Emma nodded, though her concern hadn't faded. "Do you think they'll come back?" "I don't know," Mark admitted. "But we need to be ready if they do." Over the next few days, the family remained on edge, watching the woods for any signs of the mysterious figure. Max seemed more alert than ever, his ears constantly perked and his nose twitching, as if he could sense something the humans couldn't. And then, one evening, there was another knock at the door. Mark and Emma exchanged a glance, their hearts racing. Max was already at the door, his tail wagging cautiously. This time, when Mark opened the door, there was no one there, only another envelope. Inside was a photograph of the baby, swaddled in the same blankets they'd found her in. On the back, a single line was written: "Thank you for saving her, she's in danger." Mark's blood ran cold as he read the words aloud. Emma gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Mark said, his mind racing. "But whoever left this knows something, and if she's still in danger, we need to figure out why." Max barked softly, as if to say, "I'm ready." Mark placed a hand on the dog's head, his resolve hardening. "We'll find out the truth," he said. "No matter what it takes." Emma's mind raced as she struggled to understand Bella's sudden transformation. The dog that had been a loyal, calm companion now seemed consumed with urgency, her actions growing more desperate by the second. Bella barked, scratched at the door, and even let out a sorrowful whimper as if pleading with Emma to act. "I can't ignore this anymore," Emma muttered, her voice trembling as she grabbed her coat. She opened the door, and Bella immediately darted outside into the snow-covered yard, barking with renewed intensity. Emma followed, her boots crunching on the icy ground as she struggled to keep up. Bella led Emma through the backyard, her paws creating a trail in the freshly fallen snow. The dog's behavior was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. She moved with purpose, occasionally pausing to glance back at her owner, as though urging her to hurry. "Where are you taking me, girl?" Emma whispered, clutching her coat tighter against the biting wind. After what felt like an eternity, Bella stopped near the old oak tree that marked the edge of their property. She began pawing at the ground, her barks replaced with low, mournful whines. Emma's heart pounded as she knelt beside Bella, who had unearthed a small, weathered wooden box hidden beneath a thin layer of snow. With shaking hands, Emma picked up the box and opened it. Inside were faded photographs and letters, their edges yellowed with age. Her breath caught as she recognized the faces staring back at her from the photographs, her parents, smiling warmly, holding a tiny baby wrapped in a blue blanket. It was her. What is this?" Emma murmured, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. She sifted through the letters, her fingers trembling as she unfolded one. It was written in her mother's handwriting. The letter revealed a secret Emma had never known. Her parents had been deeply involved in helping disadvantaged families in the community, using their resources to provide food, shelter, and medical assistance. They had done it all quietly, never seeking recognition, but one line in the letter sent chills down Emma's spine. "Emma, if you're reading this, it means something we never anticipated has come to light. There's more you need to know. Find the journal in the attic. It holds the answers." Emma clutched the letter to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Her parents had always been her heroes, but she had no idea of the depth of their sacrifices. Bella nudged Emma's hand gently, as if to comfort her. "I understand now," Emma said softly, her voice breaking. "You're trying to guide me." Determined to uncover the truth, Emma rushed back to the house, Bella trotting faithfully by her side. She climbed the creaky attic stairs, her heart racing as she searched through dusty boxes and forgotten keepsakes. Finally, tucked away in a corner, she found an old leather-bound journal with her father's initials engraved on the cover. Flipping through the pages, Emma uncovered a detailed account of her parents' efforts to help families in need. The journal was filled with names, dates, and stories of lives they had touched. But toward the end, the entries became darker. Her father had written about threats they had received from powerful individuals who saw their altruism as a threat to their own selfish interests. One passage stood out. "We've done what we can, but the danger is real. They've warned us to stop, but we can't turn our backs on those who need us. If something happens to us, Bella will know. She'll protect Emma and lead her to the truth." Emma's breath hitched as she realized the gravity of her parents' words. Everything Bella had done, the barking, blocking the door and leading her to the box, had been part of her parents' plan to ensure their legacy of kindness and courage would not be forgotten. "She knew," Emma whispered, looking at Bella, who gazed back at her with calm, understanding eyes. "You've been protecting me all along." But the journal also hinted at unfinished business. There were names of people her parents had been helping before their deaths, people who might still be in danger. Emma knew she couldn't ignore this. Her parents had risked everything to do what was right. And now it was her turn. Bella let out a soft bark, as if encouraging her. Emma nodded, her resolve strengthening. "We're not done yet, Bella," she said. "We'll finish what they started." With the journal in hand, Emma sat down at her kitchen table, poring over the entries late into the night. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the world in a cold, quiet stillness. But inside, a fire burned brightly within Emma, a determination to honor her parents' legacy and uncover the full truth of what had happened to them. As Bella lay at her feet, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The secrets her parents had hidden were more complex than she had ever imagined, and the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. But she wasn't alone. With Bella by her side, Emma felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together they would uncover the truth, no matter how heartbreaking it might be. As dawn broke over the snow-covered landscape, Emma sat at the kitchen table, her parents' journal open before her. The revelations from the night before swirled in her mind, each entry pulling her deeper into their world of quiet heroism and selfless acts. Bella lay at her feet, her eyes watchful, as though she sensed the weight of what Emma had uncovered. One name appeared repeatedly in the journal: Margaret Delaney. The entries spoke of Margaret as a close friend and confidant of Emma's parents, someone who had shared their mission of helping others. But the last note about her was unsettling. "Margaret is in danger. They've threatened her because of the documents she has. If anything happens to us, she'll know what to do. Emma must find her." Emma's heart raced. Margaret was still alive, or at least she hoped so. The journal didn't provide an address, but it mentioned a bakery Margaret owned in a nearby town. Emma grabbed her phone, her hands trembling, and searched for the bakery's name. Within moments, she found it: Margaret's Hearth. "It's still there," Emma whispered, a flicker of hope igniting within her. She glanced down at Bella, who wagged her tail, sensing the urgency. "Come on, girl. We're going for a ride." The drive to the town was tense. The roads were slick with fresh snow, and the early morning sun cast long shadows over the countryside. Emma's thoughts raced as she replayed her parents' warnings. If Margaret had been holding on to dangerous documents for all these years, was she safe? And, more importantly, Why had Bella's behavior changed so suddenly? Was it possible that Margaret's safety, or even her own, was at risk? When Emma arrived at the bakery, she was struck by its charming appearance. A small red brick building with frosted windows and a sign that read Margaret's Hearth, fresh baked goods daily. Despite the cozy exterior, Emma couldn't shake the unease that settled in her chest. She entered, the bell above the door jingling softly. The warm aroma of freshly baked bread and pastries greeted her, momentarily calming her nerves. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman with kind eyes and silver hair pinned neatly into a bun. She looked up and smiled. "Good morning. What can I get for you today?" the woman asked warmly. Emma hesitated, unsure how to begin. "Are you Margaret Delaney?" she finally asked, her voice trembling slightly. The woman's smile faltered, and she studied Emma carefully. "Yes, I am." "And you are?" "I'm Emma," she said, her voice gaining strength. "Emma Carter. My parents were Sarah and Michael Carter." At the mention of their names, Margaret's eyes widened, and she quickly stepped out from behind the counter. "Sarah and Michael's daughter." "Oh, my dear, come with me." Margaret led Emma to a small back room, away from the prying eyes of customers. Bella followed closely, her ears perked and her body tense. Once inside, Margaret closed the door and gestured for Emma to sit. "I never thought I'd see you," Margaret said, her voice tinged with sadness. "Your parents were remarkable people. What brings you here after all this time?" Emma pulled the journal from her bag and placed it on the table. "I found this. It led me to you. It says you have documents, something they entrusted to you." Margaret's face grew serious. She glanced around the room, as though ensuring no one could overhear them. "They did, and I've kept them safe all these years, waiting for the day someone would come for them." "But Emma, you must understand, these documents are dangerous. They expose powerful people who would do anything to keep their secrets hidden." Emma's heart pounded. "Why now? Why is Bella acting like this? It's as if she knows something I don't." Margaret studied Bella, who sat alert at Emma's feet. "Animals have instincts we can't fully comprehend. Maybe she senses the urgency, or maybe your parents trained her for this moment. Either way, the timing isn't a coincidence." Margaret stood and retrieved a small locked box from a hidden compartment in the wall. She placed it on the table and handed Emma a key. "This is everything your parents entrusted to me. Bank records, letters, and evidence of the corruption they were fighting against. But once you open it, there's no going back. Are you ready for this?" Emma hesitated, her fingers brushing against the key. The weight of her parents' legacy bore down on her, but she felt a growing determination. "I have to know the truth. For them. For me." She unlocked the box and carefully removed its contents. Inside were stacks of papers, photographs, and a USB drive. As Emma skimmed through the documents, the scale of her parents' mission became clear. They had uncovered a network of corruption that stretched far beyond what she had imagined. Local officials, influential business people, and even law enforcement were implicated. Margaret placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "They wanted you to finish what they started. But be careful, Emma. These people won't stop to protect their secrets." Emma nodded, her resolve solidifying. "I won't let their sacrifices be in vain. Bella and I will see this through." As she gathered the documents, Emma knew the road ahead would be perilous. But with Bella by her side and her parents' courage guiding her, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The truth was waiting, and Emma was determined to uncover it no matter the cost. The weight of the documents pressed heavily on Emma's mind as she left Margaret's bakery. The revelations were staggering and the stakes higher than she could have anticipated. Bella, always by her side, walked with purpose, her steps in sync with Emma's growing determination. As Emma settled into her car, she realized the first challenge would be figuring out who to trust. The documents implicated several local officials, making it impossible to turn to the authorities without risking exposure. Margaret had been clear. The people her parents fought against would stop at nothing to bury the truth. Back home, Emma spread the contents of the box across her dining table. Photographs of shadowy meetings, records of suspicious transactions, and a flash drive labeled "For Emma" painted a vivid picture of her parents' mission. The flash drive beckoned her, but she hesitated. What if opening it unleashed more danger than she was prepared for? Bella nudged her leg, as if encouraging her to continue. Taking a deep breath, Emma inserted the flash drive into her laptop. The screen lit up with a single folder, Carter Files. Inside were dozens of files, videos, emails, and scanned documents. Among them was a video file labeled To Emma. She clicked it. Her parents' faces appeared, their expressions both somber and loving. "Emma," her father began, his voice steady, "if you're watching this, it means we couldn't finish what we started, but we believe in you. You've always been strong, resourceful, and brave. We're sorry to leave this burden on you, but the truth must come out." Her mother continued, her voice softer but resolute. "We've uncovered something that could change everything. These documents are proof of a web of corruption that stretches from our small town to powerful people in the state. It's why they're after us. But you're not alone. Bella was trained to protect you, and Margaret can guide you. Trust your instincts, and don't let fear stop you." Tears streamed down Emma's face as the video ended. Her parents' unwavering faith in her filled her with a mix of sorrow and determination. She reached down to Bella, who rested her head on Emma's lap, her amber eyes full of reassurance. "I won't let you down," Emma whispered. The next step was clear. She needed to make sense of the documents and decide how to proceed. She spent hours poring over the files, connecting the dots between names, dates, and events. One name kept resurfacing: Mayor Grant Wheeler. He had been a respected figure in the community, but the documents painted a different picture: embezzlement, bribery, and ties to criminal enterprises. Emma realized she needed allies. She thought of Margaret's parting words: "You'll find the answers in unexpected places." The bakery owner had mentioned an old friend of her parents, someone who had helped them in the past, a retired journalist named Peter Langston. If anyone could help her navigate this maze, it was him. After a quick online search, Emma found Peter's contact information. He lived in a secluded cabin just outside town. She hesitated for a moment, then dialed his number. "Hello?" a gruff voice answered. "Mr. Langston, my name is Emma Carter. My parents were Sarah and Michael Carter." There was a pause. "Carter? Sarah and Michael's daughter?" "Yes," Emma replied. "I found their documents, and I need your help." Another pause, then a sigh. "Come to my cabin." "I've been waiting for this call." The drive to Peter's cabin was tense. Bella sat in the passenger seat, her ears perked and her gaze fixed on the road ahead. The cabin was nestled in a dense forest, its rustic appearance belying the weight of the conversation Emma was about to have. Peter greeted her at the door, his grey hair and weathered face a testament to years of chasing stories. He ushered her inside, where walls lined with books and framed newspaper articles hinted at his storied career. "Your parents were brave," Peter said, gesturing for her to sit. "They risked everything for the truth. What have you found?" Emma laid out the documents, explaining everything she had uncovered. Peter listened intently, his brow furrowed as he absorbed the information. "This is explosive," he finally said, "but it's also dangerous. If Wheeler and his allies catch wind of this, they won't hesitate to come after you." "I know," Emma said, her voice steady, "but I can't walk away from this." Peter nodded. "Good, because I won't let you face this alone. We'll expose them, but we need to be smart about it. Start by making copies of everything. If anything happens to us, the truth must survive." As they strategized, Bella suddenly growled, her body tense. Emma followed her gaze to the window, where the shadow of a figure disappeared into the woods. "Someone's watching us," Peter said, his voice low. "We need to move quickly." The sense of urgency deepened. Emma and Peter worked late into the night, preparing for the battle ahead. As she left the cabin with Bella by her side, Emma felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight her parents started was now hers to finish, and she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The cold air stung Emma's cheeks as she hurried back to her car, Bella trotting close by with ears alert. The encounter at Peter's cabin had intensified the gravity of the situation. Someone was watching them, and time was running out. As she drove away, the dense forest seemed to close in, the trees casting long, ominous shadows over the winding road. "Stay vigilant, girl," Emma murmured to Bella, her eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. The documents tucked securely in her bag felt heavier with each passing mile, the weight of the truth pressing upon her. Back in town, Emma decided against returning home. It was no longer safe. Instead, She headed to a small motel on the outskirts, paying in cash to avoid leaving a trail. The room was modest but clean, a temporary sanctuary where she could regroup and plan her next move. Inside, Emma spread the copied documents across the bed, methodically organizing them by names, dates, and connections. Patterns began to emerge, a web of corruption, linking Mayor Wheeler to illicit activities that extended beyond their town. There were records of illegal land deals, bribes to officials, and ties to a corporation called Evergreen Development. Evergreen Development, Emma whispered, typing the name into her laptop. An array of articles appeared, many praising the company's investments in infrastructure and job creation. But deeper searches unveiled lawsuits, environmental violations, and allegations of coercion. A news article caught her eye. Evergreen Development announces new project in Pinecrest County. Pinecrest was just a few towns over. The article included a photo of Mayor Wheeler shaking hands with a man named Richard Hale, the CEO of Evergreen Development. "So that's the connection," Emma said, jotting down notes. Bella watched her intently, her head tilted as if understanding every word. A sudden knock at the door made Emma jump, heart pounding. She approached cautiously. "Who is it?" she called out. "Housekeeping," a woman's voice replied. Emma hadn't requested any service. "No, thank you," she said firmly. Silence followed, but shadows under the door indicated someone was still there. Bella growled softly, her fur bristling. Emma's instincts screamed that something was wrong. She quietly gathered the documents and stuffed them back into her bag. Looking around, she spotted a window in the bathroom that led to the back alley. "Come on, Bella," she whispered. They slipped into the bathroom, and Emma carefully opened the window. The cold air rushed in as she hoisted herself out, then reached back for Bella. The dog leaped through gracefully. Just as they made it into the alley, the motel room door burst open. Voices drifted out. "She's gone. Check outside." She couldn't have gotten far. Emma's pulse raced. She and Bella moved quickly but quietly down the alley, keeping to the shadows. They emerged onto a side street, and Emma ducked into a small cafe that was just opening for the day. The barista looked up in surprise as Emma and Bella entered. "We're not quite open yet, but you're welcome to come in and warm up," she offered kindly. "Thank you," Emma replied, her voice shaky. She took a seat by the window, pulling out her phone to call Peter. "Emma, where are you?" Peter answered, concern evident in his voice. "I'm at a cafe on Maple Street. They found me at the motel. I think they're tracking me somehow." "Listen carefully," Peter said urgently. "You need to disable your phone's GPS and remove the battery if possible. They might be using it to locate you." Emma quickly powered off her phone. "What should I do now?" "Meet me at the old train station in half an hour. It's abandoned, so we should be safe to talk." She agreed and ended the call, her hands trembling. The barista approached with a cup of hot tea. "On the house. You look like you could use it." "Thank you," Emma said, offering a faint smile. After warming up, Emma and Bella headed toward the train station, taking back streets and alleys to avoid detection. The building was a relic from another era, its once grand architecture now faded and overgrown with ivy. Peter was already there, waiting near the entrance. "We don't have much time," he said. "They've escalated their efforts. We need to get this information to someone who can act on it without being compromised." "Who can we trust?" Emma asked. "I have a contact at a national newspaper, an investigative journalist named Lisa Chen. She's reputable and has the resources to protect you and expose this corruption." Just then, Bella growled again, her eyes fixed on a pair of black SUVs that had pulled up nearby. Men in dark suits stepped out, scanning the area. "They've found us," Emma whispered. Peter nodded grimly. "Follow me." They slipped inside the station, navigating through old platforms and decaying corridors. The building's labyrinthine layout provided cover, but the footsteps behind them grew closer. Reaching a maintenance tunnel, Peter led them underground. The narrow passage was damp and dimly lit, but it offered a potential escape. "Keep moving," he urged. They emerged several blocks away, the sound of sirens now filling the air. It was unclear if the police were allies or part of the corruption. Trusting no one, they made their way to Peter's car hidden in an alley. As they sped away, Emma looked back to see the men swarming the area they'd just left. Her relief was tempered by the realization of how relentless their pursuers were. "Time to contact Lisa," Peter said, dialing a number on a secure phone. After a brief conversation, he turned to Emma. She's agreed to meet us at a safe house. We'll hand over the documents and she'll start the process of exposing them. Emma nodded, exhaustion catching up to her. I just want this to end. It will, Peter assured her. Kaj, your parents would be proud of you. Bella rested her head on Emma's lap, her steady presence a source of comfort. Despite the danger, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. They were closer than ever to unveiling the truth, and with allies like Peter and Lisa, they had a fighting chance. As they drove toward an uncertain future, Emma resolved to see this journey through, for her parents, for the people wronged by corruption, and for herself. The shadows were closing in, but she was no longer running scared. She was running toward justice. As Peter's car sped through the dimly lit streets, Emma's mind raced. The safe house Lisa had suggested was on the outskirts of town, a secluded cabin once used by investigative journalists during high-stakes stories. It was their last hope to regroup and strategize. Bella sat upright, her ears perked, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. The drive was tense. Every pair of headlights in the rearview mirror felt like a potential threat. Peter kept the conversation minimal, his focus on navigating the twisting roads. When they finally reached the cabin, it was shrouded in darkness, nestled between dense trees that seemed to guard it from prying eyes. Lisa was already there, waiting on the porch with a flashlight in hand. She was a petite woman with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She waved them inside quickly. We have a lot to go over and not much time, she said. The cabin's interior was rustic but functional. A large table in the center served as their makeshift war room. Emma wasted no time, spreading the documents out while recounting everything she and Peter had discovered. Lisa listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. This is damning, Lisa said finally, holding up a copy of a ledger detailing payouts to local officials. If we can authenticate these documents, it could blow the whole operation wide open. But we'll need to move fast before they realize we're going public. Emma leaned back in her chair, exhaustion etched on her face. How do we even start? They're everywhere. They tracked me to the motel, and I'm sure they'll find us here eventually. Lisa nodded grimly. They will, but we have an advantage. They don't know about me yet. I'll work with my team to get this story out. In the meantime, you two need to stay under the radar. Peter chimed in. Do we have secure channels for communication? And what about Emma's safety? Lisa pulled out a satellite phone and handed it to Peter. This is encrypted. Only use it in emergencies. As for Emma, I've arranged for a safe location, but we need to act quickly. Before they could finalize their plans, Bella let out a low growl, her body tense as she faced the door. Emma's heart sank. They're here, she whispered. Lisa extinguished the lights, plunging the cabin into darkness. Peter motioned for Emma and Bella to stay low while he peered out the window. A pair of SUVs had parked at the edge of the property. Men in dark suits were fanning out, flashlights cutting through the night. We have to move, Peter hissed. Now. Lisa grabbed a laptop and stuffed the documents into a waterproof bag. There's a back exit that leads to a trail. Follow it to the river. I'll stay and buy you time. No, Emma protested. You'll be caught. Lisa's expression was resolute. I've faced worse. This story is bigger than all of us. Go now. Peter didn't hesitate, guiding Emma and Bella toward the rear door. The sound of boots crunching on gravel grew louder as the men approached. Bella stayed close, her low growl the only sound she made. The trail was narrow and uneven, but adrenaline propelled them forward. The cold night air bit at Emma's face as branches snagged her clothing. Behind them, voices shouted and flashlights danced through the trees. Peter glanced back. Keep going, they're gaining on us. Up ahead, the trail opened into a clearing where a small boat was moored by the riverbank. Peter had arranged the escape route as a contingency. Get in, he urged. Emma climbed into the boat with Bella, while Peter untied the rope. The current was strong, and as the boat drifted into the river, the shouts from their pursuers faded into the distance. Emma exhaled deeply, the weight of the moment pressing on her chest. Salisa, she murmured, worry etched in her voice. She knows what she's doing, Peter assured her, though his expression betrayed his own doubts. She'll get the story out. The river carried them for miles, its dark waters reflecting the moonlight. They stayed silent, The only sounds, the gentle lapping of water and Bella's quiet breaths. Emma held the waterproof bag tightly, the documents within representing their last hope. Eventually, they reached a small dock where another car waited. Peter helped Emma out of the boat and into the vehicle. This will take us to a safe house farther out. From there, we can monitor the situation. Hours later, they arrived at a remote farmhouse surrounded by open fields. It was quiet, almost eerily so, but it offered the safety they desperately needed. Inside, Emma collapsed onto a worn couch while Peter secured the perimeter. Bella curled up beside her, her presence a comfort amidst the chaos. Emma ran her fingers through the dog's fur, grateful for her unwavering loyalty. Peter returned, his face lined with fatigue. "We're clear for now," he said. "But this is far from over." As dawn broke, Emma's phone buzzed. A message from Lisa sent through a secure channel. It read, "The story is live. Brace yourselves." Emma's heart raced as she opened a news site on Peter's laptop. The headline read, "Small-town corruption exposed. Mayor and officials under investigation." The article detailed every connection, every payout, and every betrayal uncovered in the documents. "We did it," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. Peter placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This is just the beginning. They'll fight back, but now the world knows." Bella barked softly, as if in agreement. For the first time in days, Emma felt a glimmer of hope. They had turned the tide, but the battle for justice was far from over. Together, they would see it through. The farmhouse kitchen was dimly lit, the morning sunlight filtering through the lace curtains. Emma sat at the worn wooden table, clutching a mug of coffee with trembling hands. The news was spreading like wildfire. Lisa's article had gone viral, garnering national attention. Social media buzzed with outrage as citizens from their town and beyond shared the revelations. Peter entered the kitchen, his laptop under one arm and a walkie-talkie in hand. "It's a circus out there," he said, setting the laptop down. "The mayor's office is barricaded and reporters are swarming the building. Law enforcement has been split. Some officers loyal to Wheeler, others demanding an investigation." Emma's stomach churned. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" Peter nodded solemnly. "They will. But now, with the story out, they'll have to tread carefully. Public scrutiny is our best shield." Bella, lying at Emma's feet, perked up at the sound of a distant vehicle. Her ears twitched, and she let out a low, warning growl. Emma froze, her eyes meeting Peter's. "Do you think?" Peter held up a hand, silencing her. He grabbed the walkie-talkie and spoke into it. "Are we expecting anyone?" A crackly voice replied, "No, all clear on my end." Peter motioned for Emma to stay put. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a handgun, tucking it into his waistband. Bella followed him to the door, her hackles raised. Peeking through the curtains, Peter spotted a black sedan idling at the edge of the property. Its windows were tinted, obscuring the occupants. "Stay here," he whispered to Emma, stepping outside. The cold air stung as Peter approached the car, his every sense on high alert. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a middle-aged man in a sharp suit. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. "I'm not here to cause trouble," the man said, his voice calm but firm. "My name is Robert Langston. I'm a federal investigator." Peter's eyes narrowed. "Federal, huh? Let's see some ID." The man complied, handing over his badge and credentials. Peter scrutinized them, his jaw tight. "Why are you here?" Langston glanced at the farmhouse. "I need to speak with Emma Hart. What she's uncovered has implications far beyond your town." Peter hesitated, then nodded toward the house. "Follow me, but don't try anything." Inside, Emma stood as they entered, her expression wary. Langston introduced himself, taking a seat at the table. "Miss Hart, I've read Lisa Chen's article and reviewed the evidence she submitted. I need you to understand the magnitude of what you've exposed." Emma's grip tightened on her coffee mug. "And what do you mean?" Langston leaned forward, his tone grave. "The corruption in your town is part of a much larger network. Evergreen Development is just the tip of the iceberg. They've been laundering money, coercing officials and silencing whistleblowers across multiple states." Peter folded his arms. "So why come to us? Why not handle this on your own?" Langston sighed. "We need Emma to testify. Her first-hand account and the original documents are crucial to building a case. Without her, the investigation stalls." Emma's heart sank. Testify? In court? Yes, Langston said gently. It's risky, but you'll be under federal protection. We'll relocate you and provide round-the-clock security, Peter interjected. And what happens if they find her before that? They've already proven they'll stop at nothing. Langston's jaw tightened. That's why we need to move quickly. I have a safe house ready. We'll transfer Emma and Bella there immediately. Emma looked down at Bella, who stared back with unwavering loyalty. What about Peter? He's been with me through all of this. Langston hesitated. He can come, but only temporarily. The more people involved, the greater the risk. Peter nodded. I'll make sure she gets there safely. Langston stood, pulling out a secure satellite phone. I need to make some calls. Gather your things. We leave in 15 minutes. As Langston stepped outside to make his call, Emma turned to Peter. Do you think this is the right choice? Peter placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. It's the only choice. If Langston's telling the truth, this could dismantle the entire operation, and you'd be helping countless others. Emma nodded, steeling herself. She packed a small bag with essentials, while Peter secured the farmhouse. Bella trotted after her, sensing the urgency in the air. When they were ready, Langston led them to his car. The drive was tense, every turn feeling like a potential ambush. Bella sat alert in the back seat, her eyes scanning the horizon. After hours on the road, they reached the safe house, a nondescript cabin in a remote area surrounded by dense woods. Langston handed Peter a dossier. This contains everything you'll need for the next few days. I'll be back once arrangements are finalized for the testimony. As Langston drove off, Peter locked the doors and checked the perimeter. Inside, Emma sat on the couch, clutching Bella's leash. Do you think we'll ever be safe again? She asked. Peter sat beside her, his expression somber. I don't know, but I do know you're not alone in this. We'll face whatever comes, together. Bella rested her head on Emma's lap, her presence a reminder of the bond that had carried them through the chaos. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, but inside the cabin, a fragile sense of hope began to take root. Emma resolved to see this through, no matter the cost. The truth was out, and now it was up to her to ensure justice prevailed. The safe house was quiet that evening, the kind of silence that seemed louder than any noise. Emma sat by the fireplace, staring into the flickering flames. Bella lay at her feet, her steady breathing the only sound in the room. Peter was in the next room, reviewing the documents Langston had left. The weight of the day bore down on Emma's shoulders as she mulled over the consequences of her decision. Her mind drifted to Christmas mornings from her childhood, the warmth of her family, the joy of unwrapping presents, and the laughter that echoed through the house. All of it felt like a distant memory. Now, the reality she faced was starkly different. She had uncovered a truth so dangerous that it threatened not just her safety but also her future. Emma, Peter called, stepping into the room. He held a file in his hand, his expression grim. There's more to this than we realized. Emma looked up, her heart sinking. Tice, what do you mean? Peter sat across from her, placing the file on the table between them. Langston's documents include details about other whistleblowers, people who tried to expose Evergreen Development and their network. Most of them disappeared or met. Untimely ends. A chill ran through Emma. And he expects me to testify against them. Knowing this, Peter nodded. He does. But it's not just about you, Emma. It's about everyone they've hurt. If you don't testify, they'll keep doing this. They'll ruin more lives. Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. But how do I trust Langston? How do I know he won't just use me and leave me to deal with the fallout? Peter leaned forward, his voice firm. You don't have to trust him. You only need to trust yourself. You've come this far, Emma. You're stronger than you think. Before Emma could respond, Bella's ears perked up. She stood, her tail stiff, and let out a low growl. Peter immediately reached for his sidearm, his eyes scanning the room. What is it, girl? He whispered. Bella moved toward the front door, her nose twitching. Peter gestured for Emma to stay back as he approached the window, peering out into the darkness. The forest beyond was bathed in shadows, the moonlight barely illuminating the dense trees. I don't see anything, Peter murmured, but Bella's growling intensified. Emma's pulse quickened. Do you think someone's out there? Peter didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved toward the door, unlocking it silently and stepping outside. Bella followed closely, her posture tense. Emma watched from the doorway, her hands gripping the frame. The air was cold, and the only sound was the rustling of the trees in the wind. Peter scanned the perimeter, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. Bella sniffed the ground, moving with purpose. Suddenly, she stopped, her head snapping toward the tree line. A low bark escaped her, and Peter turned his flashlight in the same direction. For a moment, there was nothing, just the sway of the branches. Then a figure stepped into view. "Who's there?" Peter demanded, raising his weapon. The figure raised their hands, stepping closer. As they emerged from the shadows, Emma recognized them. It was Langston. "What are you doing here?" Peter asked, his voice edged with suspicion. Langston approached cautiously, his breath visible in the cold air. "I had to come back. There's been a development. They know where you are." Emma's heart sank. "What? How?" Langston shook his head. "I don't know, but they've been mobilizing. My sources say they'll make a move tonight. We need to leave, now." Peter frowned. "How did they find us? This location was supposed to be secure." Langston's expression darkened. "There's a leak in my team. Someone tipped them off. I barely got here ahead of them." Emma glanced at Bella, who stood protectively by her side. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. Langston gestured toward the car parked down the hill. "I have another safe house ready. It's farther out, more secluded, but we need to go now." Peter hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "How do we know we can trust you? For all we know, you could be leading us into a trap." Langston met his gaze, his tone resolute. "You don't. But if we stay here, you'll find out the hard way that I'm telling the truth." A tense silence followed. Then Emma spoke, her voice steady. "We go." Peter glanced at her, then nodded reluctantly. "Fine. But I'm driving." They quickly packed their things, leaving no trace behind. Bella barked once, her gaze fixed on the distant forest, as if sensing the danger lurking there. Emma placed a hand on her head, whispering, "It's okay, girl. We'll be safe." As they loaded into Langston's car, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a long and perilous journey. The headlights cut through the darkness as they sped away, leaving the safe house behind. In the rearview mirror, Emma thought she saw movement, shadows darting between the trees. But as the car turned a corner and the forest faded from view, she pushed the thought aside. For now, all they could do was keep moving forward. As the car sped through the winding forest roads, Emma sat in the back seat with Bella resting her head on her lap. Langston was in the passenger seat, giving Peter directions, while Peter drove with a steady focus. The glow of the dashboard illuminated their tense expressions, and the silence in the car was broken only by the hum of the engine. Emma's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of the situation. She had chosen to trust Langston again, but doubt lingered in her heart. She glanced at him, his face illuminated by the passing streetlights. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked, her voice firm but tinged with unease. Langston turned slightly toward her. "An old hunting lodge about an hour from here. It's off the grid, surrounded by dense woods. They'll have a hard time tracking us there." Peter frowned, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. "And how do you know they haven't already followed you?" Langston's jaw tightened. "I made sure I wasn't followed. Trust me, I wouldn't put any of you at risk." Peter let out a short laugh, devoid of humor. "Trust isn't something you've exactly earned, Langston." Emma intervened, her voice cutting through the tension. "We don't have time for this. Right now, we need to focus on staying ahead of whoever is after us." Langston nodded in agreement. "She's right. Once we're at the lodge, we can regroup and figure out our next move." The car fell silent again, and Emma's thoughts drifted to Christmas mornings long past. This one was far from what she had imagined. Instead of the warmth of family and festive cheer, there was fear, uncertainty, and the looming shadow of danger. Bella let out a soft whimper, snapping Emma out of her thoughts. She stroked the dog's fur soothingly, whispering, "It's okay, girl. We'll get through this." Suddenly, the headlights illuminated a figure standing in the middle of the road. Peter slammed on the brakes, and the car screeched to a halt. Everyone was jolted forward, and Bella barked sharply, her body tense. "What the hell?" Peter muttered, squinting through the windshield. The figure, shrouded in the darkness of the forest, didn't move. Langston unbuckled his seatbelt, his hand instinctively going to his side where he kept a concealed weapon. "Stay here," he said firmly. Opening the car door, Peter was quick to follow. "You're not going out there alone." Emma leaned forward, her heart pounding. "Be careful." Langston and Peter stepped out into the cold night, the sound of the car engine idling behind them. The figure still didn't move, standing eerily still in the middle of the road. Langston called out, "Hey, who are you? What do you want?" There was no response. Langston and Peter exchanged a glance before cautiously moving closer. As they approached, they realized the figure wasn't a person. It was a mannequin, crudely dressed in a tattered coat and hat. Langston cursed under his breath. "A diversion." Peter spun around, his eyes scanning the dark forest on either side of the road. "It's a setup." Before they could react further, the sound of tires screeching pierced the air. A black SUV emerged from the shadows, its headlights off until the last moment. It came to a stop behind their car, blocking them in. "Get in the car now!" Peter shouted, his voice urgent. Langston and Peter sprinted back to the car as men in dark clothing spilled out of the SUV. Bella barked furiously, and Emma opened the back door, calling for the dog to get inside. Peter jumped into the driver's seat while Langston slid into the passenger seat, slamming the door shut. "Drive!" Langston yelled, and Peter didn't hesitate. He threw the car into reverse, slamming on the gas. The tires screeched as they sped backward, narrowly avoiding the SUV. He spun the wheel, maneuvering the car into a sharp turn, and they tore down the road. Gunshots rang out, shattering the rear window. Emma ducked instinctively, pulling Bella close. "Keep your head down!" she shouted. Peter pushed the car to its limits, the speedometer climbing as they raced through the forest. The men from the SUV gave chase, their headlights cutting through the darkness behind them. Langston pulled out his gun, rolling down the window. He fired several shots at the pursuing vehicle, but it only seemed to enrage their pursuers. "We can't outrun them forever," Peter shouted over the noise. Langston pointed ahead. "There's a turnoff coming up. Take it. It leads to an old logging road. They won't know the terrain." Peter spotted the narrow path and swerved onto it, the car bouncing over the uneven dirt road. The SUV hesitated at the turn, giving them a brief advantage. Langston glanced back. "They're slowing down. Keep going." The dense forest closed in around them, the trees forming a dark tunnel. Peter navigated the treacherous road with skill, but the car was taking a beating. Emma held Bella tightly, her heart racing. After what felt like an eternity, the road opened up to a clearing. Langston pointed to a small cabin nestled among the trees. "There, that's the lodge." Peter pulled up to the cabin, and they all scrambled out of the car. Langston led the way to the door, unlocking it quickly. Once inside, they barricaded the entrance, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. For the moment, they were safe, but the danger was far from over. The tension in the lodge grew as the night deepened, the howling wind outside mingling with the creaks of the old wooden walls. Emma, Peter, and Langston had worked tirelessly to fortify their position. Tripwires lined the perimeter, makeshift barricades blocked the windows, and a fire burned low in the hearth, casting ominous shadows on the walls. Bella, ever vigilant, lay by the door, her ears perked up, sensing the weight of what was to come. "Are we sure this will hold them off?" Peter asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Langston tightened his grip on the rifle in his hands. "No," he admitted. "Damn it, it'll give us a fighting chance." Emma glanced at Bella, who suddenly stood on her hackles raised. The dog let out a low growl, her gaze fixed on the door. "They're here," Emma whispered, her heart pounding. Outside, faint crunching sounds grew louder, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching through the snow. Langston motioned for them to stay quiet as he positioned himself near the window, peering through a narrow gap in the blinds. His jaw tightened. "It's them." Emma's stomach churned. The shadows outside multiplied, figures moving with practiced precision. These weren't ordinary intruders. They were professionals, armed and methodical. A loud knock shattered the tense silence. "Langston!" A voice boomed from outside. "So we know you're in there. Hand over the notebook, and this doesn't have to end badly." Langston didn't reply, his grip tightening on the rifle. Peter, visibly shaking, muttered, "This is insane. We're not soldiers." Emma crouched beside Bella, stroking the dog's fur. "Stay close, girl," she whispered, her voice trembling. Bella's growl deepened, her loyalty unshaken. The voice outside grew impatient. "Last chance, Langston. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Langston's eyes met Emma's. "No matter what happens, keep Bella safe," he said, his voice resolute. Before Emma could respond, the first wave hit. A deafening crash shattered the front door as the intruders stormed the lodge. Chaos erupted. Langston fired the first shot, the recoil reverberating through the room. Peter scrambled for cover, knocking over a table in his panic. Emma grabbed a heavy wooden plank, ready to defend herself. Bella, undeterred by the commotion, lunged at the nearest intruder, her ferocious bark startling him. The man stumbled back, giving Langston an opening to disable him with a well-placed shot. "Upstairs! Go!" Langston shouted. Emma and Peter didn't hesitate, retreating up the narrow staircase with Bella at their heels. The upper floor offered little sanctuary, with only a single room and a boarded-up window. Emma barricaded the door as best she could, while Peter fumbled to reload a weapon Langston had handed him earlier. "I don't know how to use this," Peter hissed, his hands shaking. "Figure it out," Emma snapped, adrenaline taking over. "We don't have a choice." Downstairs, the battle raged. Langston held his ground, moving with calculated precision as he picked off the intruders one by one. But their numbers seemed endless, and his ammunition was dwindling. Upstairs, Bella's growl intensified. Emma followed the dog's gaze to the window, where the faint outline of a figure appeared, prying at the boards. "They're coming through," she shouted. Peter raised the rifle, his hands trembling, and fired a shot. The glass shattered, and the figure fell back, disappearing into the darkness. "I got him," Peter said, disbelief in his voice. "Good," Emma said. "Now keep doing it." Suddenly, an explosion rocked the house as a grenade was tossed into the lower level. The force knocked Emma and Peter to the ground, debris raining down around them. Bella barked frantically, her body shielding Emma from falling splinters. Langston's voice rang out from below. "Go! Now!" Emma hesitated, torn between staying and following Langston's command. "Phyllis, we can't leave him," she yelled to Peter. "He's buying us time," Peter argued, pulling her toward the window. "We have to get out of here." Reluctantly, Emma grabbed Bella's collar and climbed out the shattered window, Peter following close behind. The cold night air stung her face as they scrambled down the roof and into the snow below. Behind them, the lodge was engulfed in flames, the glow lighting up the night sky. Langston's silhouette appeared in the doorway, rifle in hand. He turned to face the remaining intruders, a grim determination on his face. "Come on then," he growled. Emma choked back a sob as the lodge erupted in a final explosion, the force knocking her and Peter to the ground. Bella whimpered, curling close to Emma as the flames consumed the building. The dawn broke over the smoldering ruins of the lodge, the once pristine snow now darkened with ash and debris. Emma sat with Bella by her side, her arms wrapped tightly around the dog. Peter paced nearby, his face pale and drawn. "Langston," Emma whispered, her voice cracking. Peter shook his head. He knew what he was doing. "He gave us a chance." The sound of approaching vehicles broke the heavy silence. Emma tensed, but it wasn't the enemy. It was the authorities, alerted by the distant explosions. Uniformed officers and rescue personnel swarmed the area, their faces a mix of concern and determination. Emma stood, clutching the notebook Langston had sacrificed everything to protect. She approached the lead officer, her resolve hardening. "This," she said, holding out the notebook, "is why they came for us. It's proof of everything." The officer took the notebook, his expression grave as he flipped through its pages. "Silas will make sure this gets into the right hands," he assured her. "See that it does," Emma said firmly. "People need to know the truth." As the authorities secured the scene and began their investigation, Emma knelt beside Bella, burying her face in the dog's fur. "We did it, girl," she whispered. "We made it." Peter joined her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "What now?" he asked. Emma looked toward the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight pierced the grey sky. "We move forward," she said. "For Langston. For the truth. For everyone who's counting on us." Bella barked softly, her tail wagging despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Together they rose, ready to face whatever came next.